Serious to anybody who likes exploring abandoned, rundown places. What was the scariest thing that has ever happened to you on your adventures? Attention! Serious tag notice jokes, puns, and off-topic comments are not permitted in any comment, parent or child. Parent comments that aren't from the target group will be removed, along with their child replies. Report comments that violate these rules. Posts that have few relevant answers within the first hour, and posts that are not appropriate for the serious tag will be removed. Consider doing an AMA request instead. Thanks for your cooperation and enjoy the discussion. I am a bot, and this action was performed automatically. Please contact the moderators of this subreddit, message, compose, to =r@askreddit if you have any questions or concerns. This was when I was a kid, maybe 12-13, back when me and my 4 cousins were little hellions. They lived out on a ranch and we would ride 4-wheelers to a bunch of abandoned buildings in the country all the time. One time we came across a bridge and decided to stop and enjoy the view. It was a beautiful day, I should mention. Sun was shining, birds were singing, and the water in the river looked amazing rushing under the bridge. Then we noticed something strange. There is a metal wire tied to the rail of the bridge and hanging down into the water. Of course curiosity got the best of us, so we decide to pull it up and see what it was all about. We pull up a deer skull. A huge one too, with large antlers and everything. Mind you, this is not within the timeline of hunting season at all. Then my cousin says, "Look over there." We see what looks like an axe stuck in the middle of a tree stump down by the river. We walk to the end of the bridge and hike our way down to the river, and lo and behold, this is not an axe, it was a deer's leg that had been chopped off and stuck in the dead center of the tree stump, pointing straight up at the sky. We rushed back to the top of the bridge and decided there was no way a deer died by itself and put its leg in a tree stump and tied its skull to a metal wire. We come to the realization that someone is hunting out of season. Suddenly, as 2 of my cousins are discussing whether to take the head with them or not, they thought it was super cool but it smelled absolutely horrible. We see some hillbilly-looking men step out onto the porch of a house up on the hill. They are holding rifles. They see that we've pulled up the wire with the deer skull and start running down the hill at us. We never rode our 4-wheelers so fast. We booked it out of there. We made it back to the ranch and told our parents about it. Owner threatening to beat the garbage out of us because he thought we were after copper. Dude was actually pretty chill when he realized we were dumb teens and not meth heads, but he did force us to give over our backpacks to make sure we didn't have spray paint or tools. There used to be this abandoned asylum in the woods by the park near the house where I grew up. The main building above ground had been torn down, but the basement was still there and you could enter it through a small window that was just big enough to crawl through. The furniture and some medical stuff was all still down there. I was too afraid to go through the window, but my friend wasn't. He was down there for about 5 minutes before he screamed and jumped out of the window. He said something was chasing him. We could hear it down there scurrying around, but none of us wanted to get close enough to the window to look with the flashlight. A few years later, a woman got attacked near there by a gaze of aggressive raccoons. Broke in here before it was knocked down. There was a morgue on site and everything. Creepy AF. Suddenly we heard a booming voice coming from somewhere down the corridor. "You have entered a restricted area, please vacate immediately." We legged it, thinking the police were coming. As I've shared before in this comment, I look at abandoned, foreclosed homes for part of my job, walked through about 2,500 in the past 4 years. The time I got scared the most was in an abandoned home, all windows and doors boarded up and the house was very rough, ransacked and had lots of debris. I got in and was taking photos of all the rooms. I made my way to the basement, very dimly lit from gaps in the boards covering the windows, and upon turning the corner I see a man standing in the back corner of the room looking back at me. I yelled in fear and jumped back only to realize it was a floor-to-ceiling mirror and a reflection of myself. TLDR, myself in a large mirror. About 10 years ago I was exploring an old run-down hotel in my city with some friends at about 3 a.m. The property owners were having serious troubles with squatters, so they had put razor wire everywhere. I was wearing thin jeans, I was 18 and stupid. I tripped on some steps and thought some of the razor wire had just caught on my jeans. We keep going and get inside. Soon I realize my leg is wet. And I don't just mean wet, it is soaked from the knee down. It's dark as hell, so my buddy shines his flashlight on my leg and it turns out it's blood. I have to drop my pants in front of everyone to see where it's coming from. Right above my knee is this little cut, squirting blood. We all start cursing, one of the girls pukes and has to turn away. Fortunately my buddy, incidentally the one with the flashlight, takes off his belt and sweatshirt and makes a pressure pack for it and gets me to lay down with my leg above my head for a bit. After a while we decide we have to hike out of there and quick before security comes back for their rounds. So we tighten the belt and we hike out of there. I had to take my pants all the way off because I didn't want to rip them over the sweatshirt. So here I am walking out of this hotel and into the subsequent neighborhood to where our car was parked in my boxer briefs holding my leg, soaked in blood from the knee down. Ended up going okay, sewed it up at home with help from dude with the flashlight. He was a nifty friend to have around. TLDR, break into a hotel, trip over razor wire, don't realize it's bad until we're all the way in, have to hike out in no pants. Have good friends. Finding, approximately 150 barrels of toxic waste illegally dumped in the Packard plant in Detroit. I stayed there too long without a respirator. I had a bad headache and felt spacey for the rest of the day. I also lost about 70% of my sense of smell permanently. I found a bag of goat heads at an abandoned grain silo a mile from my house. This was a few years ago, but there was an abandoned cookie factory in my city. We found out if we walked down some train tracks you could get in through an unlocked side door. So me and two other guys went exploring. We entered the basement and wandered through. It was obvious people had been there before by the garbage tea, Hail Satan, graffiti tags all over what was a locker, shower room. Anyway, we come to a ladder going up to the next floor and I proceed to go up it and realize when the company left the building they had sectioned this portion of the building off. The ladder went up and had a curved rung on it, so they had take a large piece of plywood and cut holes in it to fit in through the rungs and laid it on the floor to block it off. I get to the top, lock my legs on the ladder and push hard on the plywood and it comes up. There on the floor about 6 inches in front of my face was a glass orb. It was reflecting, there in the darkness. I'm looking at my own face and what I can make out with my light. I just stayed there for a minute expecting something to come out of the darkness and tear my fluffing face off and pull me up the ladder. So I took a breath, lifted the plywood, slid underneath onto the floor and assumed the fluffing Wolverine stance, like that was going to save me from the deranged murder ghost of the abandoned cookie factory. The two guys I was with get up the ladder and we look around. We found a 6-foot-tall T-Rex and toys and all kinds of stuff. Old children's museum exhibits. By this point, if you live in my city, you most likely know where I was. The cookie factory had a nearby children's museum and they held old exhibits for the museum in one of the empty wings in the factory, maybe for a tax break or something. I guess since the factory shut down, they blocked that part off and hoped they'd forget about it. Bonus story, we went back with a larger group, which isn't a smart idea because you make more noise obviously, and we heard someone shouting at us. With us was a friend of mine who was about 6'3" and 300 pounds. Another guy had a gun on him just in case as well. So we're not really worried, but this is also not somewhere that you want to draw attention to yourselves. So we decided we'd better leave as we hear this person banging garbage and cursing at us. We get out and keep walking and we finally see the person in question. Little crackhead in a purple Vikings jersey with a squeaky voice who was probably just trying to ride a high in peace. Edit, it was the Interbake Cookie Factory in Richmond, Virginia. It's now fancy new apartments. Me and two of my friends were exploring some woods on the outskirts of my city when we were around 12/13 of a year old. These woods had old barracks in them that were used during World War II but are completely abandoned, overgrown and rundown now. To actually get to any explorable barracks you had to go quite deep into the forest and up some very steep hills in which you use the trees' roots that grow down them to climb up. This was the first time me and my friends had ventured this deep before, so all were pretty excited at seeing how far we could go and how big the place actually was. Eventually, we came to a crosspath and we chose to go down the right side. We had to squeeze our way through some tight stinging nettle bushes, but luckily we all had long clothes on to protect us. We stumbled out into this huge clearing area where right in front of us was a huge building that had a massive entrance in the side. We were all astounded as we didn't realize any buildings this big were in this forest and we hadn't seen any real abandoned places before. Of course we decided to go in and check it out, and inside it stretched quite deep and was very dark. Being young, we were all pretty nervous to actually set foot any further than where the natural light from the opening spread to. We hung around the entrance for a bit, messing around, echoing our voices and such. Eventually one of my friends is looking off into the darkness with a very frightened expression on his face. Me and my other friend turn to him to ask him what's the matter, and he says, "Guys, I swear I just saw a face or something in the dark over there." Me and my friend, thinking he is trying to just spook us out, tell him to stop messing with us, we aren't falling for his tricks. That's when it happened. The loud scream of an adult male fills the entire building, amplified by the echo. With that, me and my friends look at each other absolutely terrified and let out shrieks ourselves. We bolted towards the bushes in which we came and start making a break straight back the way we came without looking back. We must have run for a solid 10 minutes straight without even stopping. Those huge steep hills I spoke about earlier, we literally jumped down and just slid down them, getting covered in dirt. We finally reached the edge of the forest and stopped running. We never did find out who was in there or why, but considering how young I was, it was definitely one of my most terrifying experiences. That event stopped me from going back there for a very long time. However, as I got older, I eventually plucked up the courage to go back. I had told all my friends about this experience, and so we decided to go there with a much larger group, 10 plus. It took us a while to actually find the place again, as the forest is kinda like one straight path where you gotta chose your location to move down off the hills to find the abandoned bunkers, barracks. When we found the place, we were more equipped with flashlights and stuff. We went in and took a look around and didn't see anything out of the usual. My guess is, like people said, probably tilde a squatter scaring us off, tilde the manbearpig.